The message came at 12 a.m. He was still at his desk, tie loosened, eyes burning, the blue light from the screen flattening everything in the room. Ava's drawing was taped beside his monitor. A crooked house. 3 stick figures. 1 crossed out. His phone buzzed once, then again. Michael. My office. Now. Alexandra Reed never sent messages that late unless something had already gone wrong. He stood too fast. The chair rolled back and hit the wall. For a moment he just stared at the hallway outside his office. Dark. Empty. He already knew. His chest felt tight but not surprised. He had been waiting for something to break. He just didn't know it would be him. Alexandra's office lights were still on. That was the first thing he noticed. The rest of the floor was dark, monitors asleep, chairs pushed in. The cleaning crew had already passed through. The air smelled faintly like disinfectant and burnt coffee. He walked slower than usual. Not because he was afraid. Because he was tired. He knocked once and opened the door before she answered. She was standing by the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. The city looked cold behind her. She didn't turn right away. "You're still here," she said. It wasn't a question. I had the quarterly projections to finish. You submitted them at 9. He didn't respond. There were always more numbers, more revisions, more things that could go wrong if he stopped looking at them. She finally turned toward him. Her expression wasn't sharp. That unsettled him more than anger would have. "Sit." He did. He noticed his hands. Slight tremor. He pressed them flat against his thighs. She didn't open a file. Didn't reference a mistake. She just studied him for a long moment, like she was measuring something invisible. "When was the last time you left? Before 7? She asked. "I don't know." "That's not what I asked." He tried to think. His memory blurred into spreadsheets and late-night takeout containers. "Couple weeks ago." She nodded once. "Your team has been covering for you." He felt that. A quick flash of irritation. "Covering what?" "Your short temper. Missed details. Revisions you should have caught." His jaw tightened. "We delivered." "Yes, we did." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was worse than that. It was calm. She walked back to her desk and sat across from him, not behind it. Across. "I'm firing you," she said. The words didn't land at first. They just hung there. He blinked. There was no heat in her voice, no satisfaction, no warning. He nodded once. Slow. Understood. He didn't ask why. He didn't defend himself. He didn't mention the 70-hour weeks, or the clients he salvaged, or the nights he stayed when others left. His throat felt dry. He thought about Ava asleep at home, her school trip next month, the mortgage. He felt stupidly calm. Alexandra watched him closely. "You're not surprised?" No. He wasn't. He'd felt it building, the edge getting thinner, the room shrinking around him. He'd snapped at Mark last week over a minor error. Watched a kid flinch. He hadn't apologized. "I can pack my office tonight," he said. "Transfer files in the morning." She leaned back slightly. "Michael." He looked up. "I'm not firing you because you're incompetent." That made him frown. "I'm firing you because you're running yourself into the ground, and you're dragging the team with you." He didn't answer. "You haven't taken a full weekend off in 8 months." He stared at the carpet. "You declined the executive health check twice." "I don't need." "You fell asleep during the Larson meeting." His eyes lifted sharply. She didn't soften it. "You were speaking, and you stopped mid-sentence." Heat crawled up his neck. He remembered that. The room going quiet, someone clearing their throat. "I'm fine," he said, "but it came out thin." She shook her head. "No, you're not." The words hit harder than the firing. Because she said them like she wasn't accusing him, she said them like she was worried. He hated that. "I can manage it," he said. "It's just a phase. You've been saying that for a year." He looked at her sharply. "A year? That long?" He tried to replay the months in his head. Ava's birthday, the anniversary, the holidays he barely remembered. They blurred. Alexandra folded her hands on the desk. I can't have my director collapsing in the middle of negotiations. I can't have your team scared to bring you bad news. And I won't watch you destroy yourself to prove something. He swallowed. I'm not proving anything. She held his gaze. Aren't you? The room felt smaller. He wanted to argue, to explain that staying late wasn't about pride. It was about control, about keeping everything steady, about not letting anything else fall apart. But the words wouldn't form. She stood and walked to a cabinet, pulled out a folder, set it in front of him. You're stepping down from director effective immediately. He stared at the paper but didn't open it. You'll move into a strategic advisory role. Limited hours, no direct reports. His head lifted slowly. What? 4 days a week? No evenings? No weekends? Mandatory health assessment? Company-sponsored therapy? He blinked. That's not firing. It is, she said evenly. You're fired from the position that's killing you. His chest tightened. I don't need therapy. You fainted in the hallway last Thursday. His mind stalled. I didn't faint. You did. He tried to remember. There had been a moment. The lights, too bright, the floor closer than it should have been. I was dehydrated. Michael. She said his name quietly, and something in him cracked, just slightly. He looked away. The city lights outside blurred. He wasn't sure if it was his vision or something else. I can't step back, he said finally. They'll think I failed. They already think you're unraveling. That stung. He pressed his lips together. They don't respect burnout, he said. They respect performance. They respect leaders who last. Silence again. He thought about Ava waiting at the kitchen table some nights, drawing alone, saying it was fine. He thought about snapping at her last week because she spilled juice on paperwork. The memory made his stomach twist. This isn't punishment, Alexandra continued. It's protection. For who? For you. He let out a breath that felt older than the room. He hadn't realized how tired he was until that moment. Not sleepy. Heavy. Like he'd been holding something too long. What if I don't agree? He asked quietly. She didn't hesitate. Then I'll terminate you completely. And you'll walk out with a severance package and no safety net. He nodded once. There it was. The edge. She wasn't asking. She was deciding. He opened the folder slowly. The terms were clear. Structured. Thought out. She'd planned this. For how long? You've been preparing this, he said. Yes. How long? A while. He didn't ask what a while meant. His pride flared for a second. Director reduced. Hours cut. Therapy required. It felt like being told he couldn't be trusted with his own life. But underneath that, something else moved. Relief. Small. Unwelcome. He closed the folder. When does it start? Tomorrow. He nodded again. His hands were steadier now. Okay. She studied him one last time. Go home, Michael. He stood. For a moment, he didn't move toward the door. He just stood there, absorbing the strange quiet of not fighting. Get some sleep, she added. He almost laughed at that. Sleep wasn't something he did. It was something that interrupted work, but he didn't say that. He walked out of her office into the dark hallway. The building felt different. He wasn't sure if it was lighter or if he was just less rigid. At his desk, he picked up Ava's drawing. The crossed-out stick figure stared back at him. He folded it carefully and slipped it into his pocket. Then he turned off his computer. For the first time in months, he didn't check his email before leaving. He stepped into the elevator. And as the doors closed, he felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not fear, not anger, just the uneasy space that opens when control slips away. And nothing collapses. The parking garage was almost empty. His footsteps echoed more than usual. Or maybe he was just hearing things more clearly. He unlocked the car and sat inside without starting it. The clock on the dashboard read 12:42 a.m. He rested his forehead against the steering wheel. Director, not anymore. He expected panic, a surge of calculations, savings, expenses, contingencies. Instead, there was a dull hum behind his ribs, a strange quiet. He straightened and started the engine. The drive home felt longer. Red lights he normally rushed through seemed slower tonight. He didn't check his phone once. When he pulled into the driveway, the porch light was still on. He had forgotten to turn it off that morning. He sat there for another moment before going inside. The house was dark except for the small lamp in the living room. Ava had insisted on leaving it on after the nights got too quiet. He locked the door gently. Her backpack was by the couch, one shoe in the hallway, the other near the stairs. He picked them up and set them together. Small things. He moved toward her room and pushed the door open just enough to see her. She was asleep on her side, hair covering half her face, one hand curled under her cheek. The nightlight cast a soft circle on the wall. He stood there longer than he meant to. He tried to remember the last time he had been home before she fell asleep. He couldn't. His chest tightened. He stepped back quietly and closed the door. In the kitchen, he poured a glass of water and leaned against the counter. The house made small, settling noises. The refrigerator humming, pipes shifting. He looked at the calendar on the wall. Parent-teacher meeting next week. He'd marked it but hadn't confirmed. He would have rescheduled. Sent apologies. Asked for notes later. He pressed his thumb against the edge of the counter until it hurt. He had built a life around staying necessary at work. At home, he kept promising he would catch up. He went upstairs and sat on the edge of his bed without turning on the lights. The room still felt the same. Same dresser. Same framed photograph on the wall. He didn't look at it. He lay back fully dressed. Alexander's words replayed, but not in full sentences. Just fragments. You're running yourself into the ground. They're covering for you. You fainted. He turned onto his side. He had told himself exhaustion was discipline, that pushing through was strength, that grief could be outrun if he kept moving fast enough. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in months, there was no list waiting for him, no emails to check, no early meeting to prepare for, just the dark. It made his breathing uneven. He reached for his phone, opened his email, closed it again. His thumb hovered over the screen. Nothing urgent. The world had not shifted because he stepped back. That unsettled him more than losing the title. He set the phone down. Sleep came in pieces. He woke once at 2018, again at 3:40. Each time disoriented, expecting the weight of unfinished work to press down. It didn't. Morning light slipped through the curtains earlier than he wanted. He sat up slowly. His head didn't ache the way it usually did. He checked the time. 6:12 a.m. He normally left by 6:30. He stayed seated on the edge of the bed, unsure what to do with the extra minutes. A soft knock on his door. Dad. Ava's voice. Small. Careful. He cleared his throat. Yeah. The door opened a few inches. She stood there in her pajamas, hair tangled, holding her stuffed rabbit by one ear. You're still here. It wasn't excitement. It was confusion. Yeah, he said. I am. She studied him like she wasn't sure if he was real. Are you sick? No. He tried to smile. It felt stiff. I don't have to go in early today. She stepped into the room slowly. Like, at all? Not early. She nodded once. He watched her process it. Can you make breakfast? She asked. There was hesitation in the question, but she expected him to say no. Yeah, he said. I can. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. In the kitchen, he cracked eggs into a pan, burned the first batch because he wasn't paying attention. She didn't comment. She sat at the table, swinging her legs, watching him like he was performing something unusual. He plated the second attempt and set it in front of her. Thanks, she said quietly. He poured orange juice and wiped a spill immediately when it dripped onto the counter. His movements were precise, controlled, too controlled. Do you have work? she asked between bites. He paused. I do. Just different. She nodded like that answer made sense. He sat across from her instead of standing by the counter scrolling through his phone. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was unfamiliar. She glanced up at him a few times, as if checking whether he would disappear. After breakfast, he helped her pack her lunch. He found himself reading the note she'd written for herself on a sticky pad stuck inside her folder. Science project due Friday. He had missed that. He swallowed. I can help with that tonight, he said. She looked up quickly. Really? Yeah. A small smile. Careful. Like she didn't want to trust it fully. Okay. He drove her to school. He hadn't done that in months. The line of cars felt slow. Parents chatting outside their windows. He kept both hands on the wheel. When they pulled up, she didn't rush out. She lingered. You're coming home after work? She asked. Yes. She nodded again. Okay. She leaned over and hugged him quickly. Not tight. Not loose. Just enough. Then she was gone, backpack bouncing as she ran toward the building. He stayed parked longer than necessary, watching. He noticed the way she looked back once before going inside. He raised his hands slightly. She disappeared to the doors. The car felt too quiet. He glanced at the time. 8:03 a.m. He was supposed to be in a strategy meeting right now. Instead, he was sitting in a school parking lot with nowhere urgent to be. He drove toward the office out of habit and then slowed halfway there. He didn't need to be in until 10. He pulled into a coffee shop instead. Sat alone with a cup he didn't really want. Around him, people typed on laptops, talked softly, laughed. He realized he didn't know how to sit without doing something measurable. His hands tapped against the table. He forced them still. This was what stepping back felt like. Not dramatic. Not freeing. Just exposed. He checked his reflection in the dark screen of his phone. There were deeper lines around his eyes than he remembered. He thought about therapy. The word made him tense. He didn't talk about things. He managed them. Fixed them. Adjusted. But Alexandra had said it like it wasn't optional. He rubbed a hand over his face. For years, he had told himself Ava needed stability. Income. Structure. Discipline. He had never considered she might need something softer. He finished the coffee and left it half full. When he finally arrived at the office later that morning, the building looked the same. But he felt slightly removed from it, like he had stepped half a pace back from the edge of something he hadn't realized he was standing on. As he walked through the lobby, he braced himself for whispers. There weren't any. People nodded normally. Elevator doors closed. He caught his reflection again in the mirrored walls. He didn't look fired. He looked tired, and for the first time, he allowed himself to admit it without turning it into a challenge. The doors opened to his floor. He stepped out, and instead of heading to his old office, he walked past it. His new desk was smaller, not tucked away in some corner like a punishment, but still noticeably different. No glass walls, no private door, just a clean space near the back of the floor, close enough to hear the hum of everyone else working. Someone had already moved his things. The mug Ava gave him last Father's Day was there, placed carefully beside the monitor. The framed photo of his wife was face down in a drawer. He froze when he saw that. For a second, his hand hovered over the drawer handle. Then he shut it again without touching anything. He sat down slowly, like the chair might reject him. His inbox was full, but the red urgency markers were gone. His calendar had been stripped almost bare. 2 meetings, both marked optional. He stared at the screen until the letters stopped looking like words. Across the floor, Mark caught his eye. Mark hesitated before walking over. He moved like someone approaching a dog that had bitten him once. "Morning," Mark said. Michael nodded. "Morning." Mark glanced at the desk, then back at him. "So it's official?" Michael didn't ask what he meant. "Yes." Mark swallowed. "Are you okay?" The question wasn't casual. Mark's voice was low, careful. Michael wanted to answer the way he always did. "Fine. Busy. Moving forward." Instead, he just nodded again. Mark didn't look convinced. "I heard Alexandra pulled you in last night," Mark said. Michael's eyes narrowed slightly. You heard that. Mark shrugged awkwardly. People talk. Michael leaned back in the chair. It creaked under him. He could feel the attention around the office even if nobody stared directly. Like everyone was trying not to stare. Let them, Michael said quietly. Mark nodded, relieved that Michael hadn't snapped. Then Mark shifted his weight. Also, he said, I'm sorry. Michael looked up. For what? Mark's throat moved. For being scared of you. The words landed harder than they should have. Michael didn't respond immediately. Mark kept talking, like he needed to get it out before he lost nerve. You're not a bad guy, he said. I know that. It's just, sometimes when you came in, it felt like the air changed. Like if anything went wrong, you'd... Mark stopped himself. Michael stared at him. Mark's eyes were steady, but his face was tense. Michael could hear his own breathing. Slow, heavy. I didn't mean to do that, Michael said finally. Mark let out a breath. I know. Michael glanced down at his hands. The tremor was back, faint but present. Mark stepped back slightly. Anyway, welcome to whatever this is. Michael gave a small, humorless exhale. Mark walked away. Michael sat there a long time without opening a single file. The floor felt louder from this angle. Conversations, footsteps, printers, phones. He used to be above all of it, sealed behind glass. Now he was inside it. He tried to work. He read a report twice and didn't absorb a sentence. He opened a spreadsheet and stared until the cells blurred. At 10:30, his phone buzzed. A message from Alexandra. Health assessment. 11,000. Don't be late. He stared at the text. He almost replied with an excuse. A reason to reschedule. A promise to handle it later. Instead, he stood. The health clinic was on the second floor, in a section of the building he had never visited. He had walked past it for years like it didn't exist. The receptionist smiled at him as if he belonged there. Michael Carter? She asked. He nodded. Please fill these out. She handed him a clipboard. The questions were simple at first. Sleep hours, appetite, alcohol intake. Then they shifted. Do you experience panic? Do you have intrusive thoughts? Have you felt hopeless in the past month? His pen paused. He stared at the paper. His hand tightened around the pen until his knuckles turned pale. Hopeless. That word didn't fit him. Hopeless people gave up. He didn't give up. He kept going. He wrote, no automatically, then hesitated and crossed it out. His chest tightened. He wrote, sometimes. The nurse called him back. The room smelled like antiseptic and clean paper. A doctor came in. Middle-aged, calm, no sharpness in his face. He shook Michael's hand and sat across from him. Michael, he said, looking at the clipboard. You work a lot. Michael didn't answer. The doctor smiled slightly. That wasn't a judgment. It's just obvious. Michael stared at the wall behind him. The doctor checked his blood pressure. His brow furrowed. Again, the doctor said. The second reading was worse. Michael watched his expression change, subtle but real. Have you been having headaches? The doctor asked. Yes, Michael admitted. Chest tightness. Michael hesitated. Sometimes. The doctor nodded slowly. Any dizziness? Michael's mind flashed to the hallway last Thursday, the floor rushing up. Yes. The doctor sat back in his chair. Michael, he said carefully, you're not just tired. Michael didn't like the tone. It sounded like warning. You're heading into dangerous territory, the doctor continued. Chronic stress doesn't stay in your mind. It lives in your body. It starts doing damage quietly. Michael swallowed. He wanted to argue. To say he could handle it, that he'd been doing this for years. But his body felt too heavy to lie convincingly. What kind of damage? He asked. The doctor looked him in the eye. Cardiovascular strain, immune system suppression, increased risk of stroke, long-term cognitive impairment. The words hit him like cold water. Stroke. He pictured Ava standing in the kitchen, waiting for him to make breakfast. He pictured her small hands trying to shake him awake. His throat tightened. The doctor's voice softened. "I'm not trying to scare you," he said. "But I need you to understand. You can't treat this like a minor inconvenience." Michael nodded once. His mouth felt dry. The doctor wrote something down. "I'm recommending immediate reduction in workload," he said. "Mandatory rest. And a psychological evaluation." Michael's jaw tightened. "I'm not crazy." The doctor didn't react. "I didn't say you were," he said. "But stress this severe usually has roots. Grief, trauma, unresolved loss. Whatever it is, you've been carrying it alone." Michael's hands clenched in his lap. The doctor stood and handed him a printed form. "Take this to HR," he said, "and schedule with the therapist on the list." Michael stared at the paper. A list of names, phone numbers, appointment availability. He took it like it weighed something. Back in the hallway, he leaned against the wall for a moment. The fluorescent lights above him buzzed softly. He stared at the floor tiles. He could hear distant office sounds upstairs. Phones, keyboards, normal life. He looked down at the form again. Therapist. He hadn't spoken his wife's name out loud in months. Not properly. Not without turning it into a quick mention. A passing fact. He folded the paper and slid it into his jacket pocket. Then he stood upright and walked back upstairs, forcing his face into something neutral. On the elevator ride up, he caught his reflection again. He looked like a man trying to keep his head above water while pretending he wasn't drowning. When the elevator doors opened, his team was gathered near the conference room. They quieted slightly when they saw him. Not out of respect. Out of uncertainty. He walked past them. Inside the conference room, Alexandra was waiting. She glanced at his face and immediately understood. She didn't ask what the doctor said. She just nodded toward the chair. "Sit," she said. He sat. Alexandra slid a document across the table. "Your new contract?" she said. "Sign it." Michael stared at it. His name was printed in bold at the bottom. He didn't pick up the pen. "What if I don't want this?" he asked. Alexandra's expression didn't change. "You do." He looked up sharply. She held his gaze. "You just don't like what it says about you." The words cut cleanly. Michael's throat tightened. He looked back down at the paper. It wasn't a demotion. Not in writing. It was a restructuring. Advisory role. Reduced hours. Mandatory leave. He felt his pride flinch. Then something else followed. A strange, unwanted relief. Alexandra watched him. "You're going to go home at 5 today," she said. "And you're going to do that every day." Michael let out a breath. "That's not realistic. It's mandatory." He picked up the pen slowly. His hand hovered over the signature line. And for a moment, he realized how deeply he had tied his identity to exhaustion. If he wasn't the one carrying everything, who was he? He signed anyway. The ink looked too dark against the white paper. Alexandra took the contract back. Then she leaned forward slightly, voice quieter. "You have a daughter," she said. Michael's eyes flickered. "Yes." "She needs you alive," Alexandra said. Michael didn't answer. His throat was too tight. Alexandra stood. "That's all," she said. Michael rose slowly. He walked out of the room and back to his desk. The office noise returned around him. Emails came in. Tasks piled up. People moved on. But something inside him had shifted. He could feel it. Like a crack in a foundation that had been pretending to hold. At 4:58 p.m., his phone buzzed again. A reminder notification. "Pick up Ava." 5:15. He stared at it. His chest tightened, not with stress this time, but with something else. A small fear. Fear that she wouldn't believe him. He shut down his computer. People glanced up as he stood. He didn't explain. He just grabbed his coat and walked out. And for the first time in years, he left the office while the sun was still up. The school parking lot was half empty when he pulled in. He was early. That never happened. He turned off the engine and sat there, watching parents gather near the entrance. Some leaned against their cars. Some scrolled through their phones. A few talked in small circles like this was part of their routine. He didn't recognize most of them. He used to send a driver when meetings ran late, or text another parent and apologize. He checked the time. 5007. His fingers twitched toward his phone out of habit. There had to be something urgent, something he was forgetting. There wasn't. The doors opened and children spilled out in uneven waves. Noise, backpacks, laughter. He scanned for her. It took him a second to find her in the crowd. Ava walked slower than the others, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes searching. When she spotted his car, she stopped. Just stood there, like she wasn't sure it was really him. He stepped out and lifted a hand. Her face shifted. Not a big smile, not excitement. Just something softening. She walked over, adjusting the straps on her backpack. "You're here," she said. "I said I would be." She nodded. They stood there a second longer than necessary. Then he reached for her backpack. "I've got it." She handed it to him without arguing. On the drive home, she talked about a science project. Something about ecosystems. Her words tumbled over each other, cautious at first, then faster when he didn't interrupt. He listened, actually listened. He asked questions when she paused, not distracted ones, real ones. She kept glancing at him like she was checking if he would drift away mid-sentence. He didn't. At a red light, she studied him openly. "You're not going back?" she asked. "Not tonight." She nodded slowly. "Okay." When they got home, he set his phone on the kitchen counter instead of keeping it in his pocket. It felt exposed there. He washed his hands and started dinner. Not takeout, not something reheated. He chopped vegetables slowly, aware of how stiff his shoulders felt. Ava sat at the table doing homework. Every few minutes she looked up. "You don't have to be quiet," he said. "I'm not," she replied, but her voice was softer than usual. He paused, knife hovering midair. "I know I haven't been around much," he said carefully. She didn't answer right away. "I know," she said finally. It was an accusation. It was fact. He swallowed. "I'm trying to fix that." She nodded but didn't look convinced. They ate together at the table. He resisted the urge to check his phone when it buzzed once. Then again, he left it face down. Ava noticed. After dinner, they spread her science project materials across the table. Construction paper, markers, a printed worksheet. He leaned over beside her. She explained her idea in detail, hands moving as she talked. He caught himself smiling slightly. Not because it was impressive, because she was animated. Alive in a way he hadn't paused to see. At one point, she reached across him for a marker and accidentally knocked over a cup of water. It spilled across the table, soaking the corner of her paper. She froze. Her eyes went wide. He felt the old reflex rise instantly, the sharp inhale, the tension in his jaw. But it didn't take over. He grabbed a towel calmly and pressed it against the spill. "It's okay," he said. Her eyes searched his face for something. Anger. Frustration. It wasn't there. "Really?" she asked. "Really." She relaxed slowly. They fixed the paper together. Later, when he tucked her into bed, she held onto his sleeve for a second. "Are you going to be like this now?" she asked quietly. He frowned. "Like what?" "Home." The word landed heavy. "Yes," he said. She studied him, then nodded once. "Okay." She let go. He stayed in the doorway after turning off her light. The hallway felt different tonight. Less like a place he passed through, more like somewhere he stood. Downstairs, his phone had accumulated 8 notifications. He picked it up and scrolled through them. 3 emails marked urgent. 2 messages from colleagues. 1 missed call. His pulse quickened slightly. He started to open the first email. Then he stopped. Alexandra's words came back. "You're fired from the position that's killing you." He locked the screen and set the phone down again. His chest felt tight, not from stress, from resisting it. He sat at the kitchen table alone. The house was quiet. Without work filling every gap, other thoughts crept in. Memories he usually outran. The hospital hallway. the way time had bent. The moment someone said the words he still avoided saying aloud, he pressed his hands flat against the table. His breathing shifted. Slow in, slow out. He hadn't let himself sit with that night fully. Not once. Work had been easier. Work had rules. Grief didn't. He stood abruptly and moved to the sink, rinsing a clean plate just to feel motion. He stared at his reflection in the dark window above it. He looked older than he remembered. Not just tired, worn. His phone buzzed again. This time he let it. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked softly. Ava, turning in her sleep, he turned off the kitchen light and walked through the house, checking the locks like he always did. But tonight, he moved slower. In the living room, he paused by the framed photograph on the shelf. He hadn't touched it in months. He picked it up now, ran his thumb lightly over the glass. He didn't say anything, didn't whisper promises. He just stood there, holding it. After a minute, he set it back down carefully. When he went upstairs, he didn't bring his laptop with him. He changed into sleep clothes and lay in bed with the lights off. The quiet pressed in again, but it didn't feel hostile, just unfamiliar. He thought about the doctor's list in his jacket pocket. Therapy. He exhaled slowly. He didn't want to open things he had sealed, but he also didn't want Ava asking if he was home like it was temporary. He stared at the ceiling. Somewhere between pride and fear, something inside him had begun to shift. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a breakthrough. It was smaller than that. A decision not to run. His phone buzzed one last time downstairs. He didn't move. Eventually, sleep came, not in sharp fragments like the night before, but steady. And when morning arrived, he didn't wake with the usual jolt of urgency. He woke because sunlight touched the edge of the bed, and for once, that was enough. The therapist's office was smaller than he expected. Not clinical. Not overly warm either. Just neutral. A couch against one wall. A chair opposite it. A bookshelf that looked used, not staged. He stood in the doorway a second too long before stepping inside. Dr. Patel didn't rise dramatically or offer a rehearsed smile. She just nodded once. Michael. Her voice was steady, not soft in a fragile way, just level. He sat on the edge of the couch instead of leaning back, hands clasped, back straight. Like this was a performance review. She didn't open a notebook immediately. Your company referred you, she said. Yes. And how do you feel about being here? He shrugged slightly. It's required. She waited. He shifted. I don't see the point, he added. That's fine, she said. He frowned faintly. He had expected persuasion. Or probing. She folded her hands in her lap. Then we can start with something practical, she said. What happens in your body when you're not working? He blinked. What do you mean? When you sit still, she clarified. Like right now. He looked down at his hands. They get restless. Anything else? My chest feels tight? She nodded. Is it tight now? He hesitated. Yes. She didn't react. On a scale of 1 to 10? 6. What would make it a 7? He almost smiled at that. Talking about things I don't want to. She let that sit. He stared at the bookshelf behind her instead of her face. There were titles about trauma, about stress, about grief. He focused on the word grief and then looked away. I manage fine, he said. I've been functioning. Functioning, she repeated. Yes. And is that the same as living? The question irritated him. He leaned back slightly, defensive. I provide for my daughter. I show up to work. I handle what needs handling. Dr. Patel nodded once. That's responsibility. He didn't answer. She tilted her head slightly. When was the last time you felt not responsible for something? He opened his mouth to respond, then stopped. He couldn't remember. Even before his wife died, he had been the stable one, the planner, the one who absorbed stress so she didn't have to. After she was gone, the weight had doubled. He cleared his throat. I don't know. She didn't fill the silence. The clock on the wall ticked quietly. He hated that he could hear it. Your blood pressure is elevated, she said gently. You fainted. You're sleeping in fragments. That's not just workload. He swallowed. I'm not falling apart. She nodded. I know. He frowned. You do? Yes. He looked at her properly for the first time. You're holding yourself together very tightly, she said. That's different. The words unsettled him. He shifted on the couch. What do you want from me? He asked. For now, nothing dramatic, she said. I want you to notice. Notice what? When your body reacts before your mind does. He stared at her. That's it? For today. He let out a slow breath. That feels small. Small is sustainable. He didn't like that answer either. She glanced at the clock. Before you leave, she said, tell me one thing you avoid thinking about. His jaw tightened. He knew immediately. The hospital hallway. The machine sounds. The way Aba had been asleep at a neighbor's house while he sat in that room alone. I don't avoid anything, he said. Dr. Patel didn't challenge him. She just held his gaze. His chest tightened further. 7. He looked down at his hands. They told me it was sudden, he said quietly. The words slipped out before he decided to say them. Dr. Patel stayed still. No warning, he continued. No time to prepare. His throat felt dry. I was at work. There it was. The sentence he hated. He swallowed. They called. I didn't pick up the first time. Silence. He stared at the carpet. I was in a meeting. His voice sounded far away. I thought I'd call back later. He stopped speaking abruptly. The air in the room felt heavier. Dr. Morius. Pachel's voice remained even. And what do you tell yourself about that? He didn't hesitate. That I should have answered. The tightness in his chest rose to 8. She didn't contradict him. She didn't soothe him. She asked, would answering have changed the outcome? He stared at the wall. No. Then what are you punishing yourself for? His jaw locked. He hadn't framed it as punishment before. He called it discipline, drive, focus. But the way he worked, the hours, the refusal to rest, it had an edge to it. Like he owed something. I don't know, he said. Dr. Patel nodded. That's a good place to start. He exhaled slowly. The tightness dropped slightly. 7 again. She didn't push further. Between now and next week, she said, when your chest tightens, don't fix it, just notice it. That's it, that's it. He stood when the session ended. His legs felt strange. Not weak, just unsteady in a new way. At the door he paused. I don't want to make this worse, he said. Worse than what? He hesitated. Then holding it in. She met his eyes calmly. Feelings don't get worse because you look at them, she said. They get clearer. He nodded once. He wasn't convinced, but he didn't argue. Back in the hallway, the office noise seemed sharper. He checked his phone automatically. 3 emails marked urgent. He felt the familiar spike of adrenaline. His chest tightened. 7. He paused, just noticed it. Didn't open the emails immediately. The sensation didn't explode the way he expected. It hovered, uncomfortable, but not lethal. He slipped the phone back into his pocket. At his desk, Mark glanced over. You good? Mark asked. Michael considered the question carefully this time. I'm working on it, he said. Mark blinked, surprised. Okay, he said slowly. Michael opened his laptop. The emails were problems, manageable ones. He handled them within his new boundaries. No extra layers, no rewriting other people's work. He felt the urge to micromanage rise and fall several times. Each time, he paused, noticed the tightness, let it pass. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt awkward, like learning to use a muscle that had atrophied. At 5 o'clock, he shut down his computer again. This time, it didn't feel as strange. It still felt exposed, but less defiant. As he walked toward the elevator, Alexandra stepped out of a conference room. She caught his eye. "You went?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "And?" He hesitated. "It's not what I thought." She waited. "It's smaller," he said finally. A faint shift in her expression. "That's good," she said. He wasn't sure yet, but as he drove to pick up Ava, he noticed something subtle. The tightness in his chest was still there, but it wasn't the only thing he felt. Ava was sitting on the curb outside the school when he arrived. Not alone, but apart from the other kids. Her backpack was in her lap. She was drawing something in a small notebook, head bent low, hair falling forward. When she saw his car, she didn't jump up. She just watched him pull in, like she was measuring whether he'd stop or keep driving. He parked and got out. "Hey," he said. She stood slowly. "Hi." He took the backpack again. She let him. On the drive home, she asked him if he could come to her science presentation on Friday. "Yeah," he said. She stared at him for a moment and then looked out the window. "You said that last time," she murmured. He gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. "I know," he said. The rest of the drive was quiet. At home, she disappeared into her room while he started dinner. He moved through the kitchen carefully, like he was still learning the rhythm of being there. The phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't look at it. The tightness came back. He noticed it. 6. He kept cutting vegetables. It buzzed again. He stopped, wiped his hands on a towel, and finally checked. A message from his old assistant. "Michael, Larson wants revisions tonight. He's pushing. Says it's urgent." His body reacted before his mind did. Heat in his chest. Pressure behind his eyes. The familiar pull. "This is what you do. This is what you're for." He stared at the message. He could picture Larson's voice, the smug impatience, the way he always assumed Michael would bend. He almost typed a reply. Then he heard Ava's door open upstairs. Soft footsteps. She came into the hallway, paused, and listened. She didn't come down. She was waiting to see if he would vanish into work again. He stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Then he locked the phone and set it on the counter. The tightness stayed. He breathed through it, slow. He forced himself to keep cooking. 10 minutes later, another message. This time from Larson himself. "Carter, need this done tonight. Call me." Michael's jaw tightened. He stared at the words, feeling the old anger stir. Not anger at Larson, anger at himself for always making this possible. He picked up the phone again. Ava's footsteps came halfway down the stairs and stopped. He could feel her there without looking. He typed one sentence. "I'm not available tonight. Send it to the team. I'll review tomorrow during business hours." He hit send. The silence that followed felt loud. He set the phone down. Ava came down the rest of the stairs slowly. She didn't speak. She just walked into the kitchen and sat at the table, pulling out her homework. Michael kept cooking, but his hands shook slightly. He hadn't realized how much power that one boundary would take. After dinner, Ava asked him to help her practice her presentation. They stood in the living room. She held her poster board in front of her like a shield. She stumbled over the first few lines, then steadied. Michael listened without correcting her too quickly. When she finished, she looked up at him anxiously. "How was it?" she asked. "It was good," he said. She narrowed her eyes. "You always say that." He nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "Then I'll be specific." Her posture changed slightly, like she was leaning in. "You explained the food chain clearly," he said, "but you rushed when you got nervous. Slow down on the middle part, and look up more." Ava blinked. Then she smiled. "Real this time." "Okay," she said. They practiced again. She got better. He felt something strange in his chest. Not tightness, not panic. Pride, maybe. But not the kind that came from achievement. Something quieter. Later, when she went upstairs to brush her teeth, he stood alone in the living room. The house felt different now. Not peaceful exactly, but less hollow. His phone buzzed again. He glanced at it. A reply from Larson. Unacceptable. We'll discuss this tomorrow. Michael stared at the screen. His pulse rose. He could feel his body preparing for a fight. He locked the phone without answering. The tightness climbed to 7. He sat down on the couch and leaned his head back. He waited for the usual flood of thoughts. What if Larson complains? What if Alexandra regrets restructuring? What if the board sees this as weakness? The questions came, but they didn't consume him the way they normally would. He just sat with them. Ava came down the stairs again in her pajamas. She walked over quietly and sat beside him. He glanced at her. "What's up?" he asked. She shrugged. "Nothing." She picked at the seam of her sleeve. Then she asked, almost casually, "Did you talk to Mom today?" The question made his body go still. His eyes stayed on the TV screen that wasn't turned on. "No," he said. Ava nodded slowly. "I talked to her," she said. Michael's throat tightened. "How?" he asked. Ava looked at him like it was obvious. "In my head," she said. He didn't respond. She leaned back against the couch. "I asked her if she misses us," Ava said. Michael's chest tightened sharply, but he didn't interrupt. "She said yes," Ava continued. Her voice was calm, but her fingers kept twisting the fabric of her pajama pants. "I asked her if she knows you're tired," she said. Michael swallowed, and she said yes, too. Ava glanced at him. "She said you don't sleep enough." Michael's eyes burned slightly. He blinked hard once. Ava's voice stayed steady. "She said you're not supposed to be sad forever." He looked down at his hands. They were clenched again. Ava's words weren't childish. They weren't dramatic. They were simple. And they hit him in a place he didn't know how to protect. He let out a slow breath. "She didn't say that," he said quietly. Ava shrugged. "She did." Michael stared at the floor. He could feel something rising. Not panic, not anger. Grief. Raw. Sudden. He hated it. He wanted to stand up and clean something. Fix something. Drive somewhere. But Ava was sitting next to him watching him, waiting. And he couldn't leave. He swallowed hard. "I miss her," Ava said. Michael nodded once. "I know." Ava's voice cracked slightly. "Do you?" He turned his head and looked at her. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. She was holding it back the way he did. That similarity hit him harder than anything else. "Yes," he said. The word came out rough. "Yes," he repeated, quieter. "I do." Ava's shoulders loosened. She leaned into him, resting her head against his arm. He stayed still, afraid that moving would break the moment. His hand hovered over her shoulder for a second. Then he placed it there gently. She exhaled. He felt her small body relax. He stared straight ahead, breathing carefully. The tightness in his chest shifted. It didn't go away, but it softened. He sat like that for a long time, holding his daughter while she pretended not to need it. And for the first time since his wife died, he realized something with sharp clarity. Ava wasn't just missing her mother. She was missing him too. When he finally tucked her into bed, she grabbed his hand. "Are you coming to my presentation?" she asked again. "Yes," he said. She stared at him a moment longer. Then she nodded. "Okay." She let go. Downstairs, he sat at the kitchen table and opened his laptop. The urge to work was still there, pulsing under his skin. He stared at the screen. Then he closed it again. Not because he was lazy. Because he knew what it would cost. He walked into the living room and stood by the shelf where the framed photo sat. He picked it up again. This time, he didn't avoid her face. He looked at her properly. The smile in the photo wasn't posed. It was mid-laugh, eyes half closed. He stared until his throat tightened. He didn't speak. He didn't apologize out loud. He just stood there, holding the frame like it was heavier than glass. Then he set it back down. And when he went upstairs to bed, he didn't feel strong. He felt human. And that scared him more than any board meeting ever had. Friday came faster than he expected. He stood in Ava's school auditorium holding a folded program in his hands, reading the same line 3 times without absorbing it. Children filled the first few rows. Parents lined the back and sides, some already filming with their phones. The room smelled faintly of floor polish and paper. He checked the time. He had blocked the entire afternoon on his calendar. No tentative. No, if possible. Blocked. His phone vibrated once in his pocket. He didn't take it out. On stage, a small boy mispronounced photosynthesis, and the audience chuckled softly. Applause followed anyway. Michael's chest tightened. 5. Not panic, just anticipation. Ava's name was halfway down the list. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. He wasn't used to waiting without producing something. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage slowly, holding her poster board in both hands. She scanned the crowd. He raised his hand slightly. Her eyes found him. She straightened. It was subtle, but he saw it. She began. Her voice was soft at first, then steadier. She slowed down in the middle, just like they practiced. She looked up once. At him. Not at the teacher, not at the other parents, at him. He held her gaze without nodding, without signaling. Just steady, she finished. Applause filled the room. Not thunderous, not dramatic, just enough. She walked off the stage and didn't look back again. He exhaled slowly. The tightness in his chest shifted into something warmer. After the presentations, parents crowded the stage to take photos. He waited until the space thinned. Ava came over, gripping her poster at the edges. "You came," she said. "Yes," she nodded once, like she was confirming something to herself. "How was it?" she asked. He crouched slightly so they were eye level. "You were clear," he said. "You didn't rush." Her mouth curved upward. "You looked at me," she added. "I did." She studied his face for a moment. Then she stepped forward and hugged him, tight this time. Not careful. Not testing. Just tight. He held her back. The room around them blurred into background noise. For a second, he let himself feel it fully. Not pride. Relief. That he hadn't missed this one. On the drive home, his phone buzzed repeatedly. He ignored it until they were in the driveway. Ava ran inside to grab a snack. He stayed in the car and checked. 5 missed calls, 2 from Larson, 1 from an unknown number, 2 emails marked urgent. His chest tightened immediately. 7. He opened the first email. "Carter, board wants updated projections before Monday. Need your input today." He stared at the screen. Today was Friday. It was already 4:30. He could go in. He could tell Ava something came up. He could fix this. The old rhythm began building in his body. Fast. Efficient. Necessary. He glanced toward the front door. Ava's silhouette moved past the living room window. He closed his eyes briefly. 7. He noticed it. He pictured Dr. Patel's office. Her steady voice, small is sustainable. He opened a new message. "I'll review first thing Monday morning during scheduled hours. Please compile all materials and send by 9 a.m. He stared at the words before sending. His pulse thudded in his ears. He hit send. The response came quickly. "Unacceptable. We can't afford delay." Michael's jaw tightened. He typed again. "The current timeline is unrealistic. If this is critical, redistribute internally. I am unavailable outside agreed hours." He sent it before he could overthink. His breathing felt shallow. He locked the phone and stepped out of the car. Inside, Ava was at the kitchen counter, chewing on an apple. "You want to go to the park?" she asked. He blinked. "Now?" "Yeah." He almost said he was tired. Instead, he nodded. "Okay." The park was a few blocks away. He hadn't been there in months. Other parents sat on benches watching their kids climb and run. He chose a bench under a tree and sat down. Ava ran toward the swings. He watched her pump her legs, trying to go higher. His phone buzzed again in his pocket. He didn't check. The tightness rose, then hovered. 7. 6. He breathed slowly. Ava jumped off the swing and ran over. "Push me," she asked. He stood and walked behind her. He pushed gently at first. She laughed. "Higher," she said. He pushed harder. She squealed, hair flying back. He kept one hand close to the chain, steadying when needed. The sun dipped lower in the sky. He could feel eyes on him, other parents, casual glances. He wasn't used to being one of them, just there, present. His phone buzzed again. He stopped pushing for a second. Ava looked back. "Don't stop," she said. He resumed. Later, when they walked home, she slipped her hand into his without thinking. He felt it, the warmth of her small fingers. He didn't comment. He just held on. That night, after she was asleep, he checked his phone. No termination. No disaster. A short message from Alexandra. "Handled. Enjoy your weekend." He stared at the screen for a long moment. Handled. He hadn't lost everything by setting a boundary. He hadn't been replaced. The world hadn't collapsed. He set the phone down and sat in the quiet. The house felt different again. Less fragile. He walked to the shelf and looked at the framed photo. "I'm trying," he said softly. Not to the room. To her. The words felt awkward, but real. He turned off the lights and went upstairs. For once, he didn't dread Monday. He didn't look forward to it either. It was just another day. And that felt like progress. The weeks that followed didn't transform him overnight. There was no sudden clarity. No moment where everything aligned. It was slower than that. Uneven. Some days he slipped. He stayed 15 minutes late and felt the old rush creep back in. Other days he snapped at Ava for something small and saw her shoulders stiffen. But now he noticed. He apologized. The first time he said, "I'm sorry" to her without defending himself, she looked startled. Then she nodded. "Okay," she said, like it was enough. Therapy sessions continued. Dr. Stard, Paddle didn't dig for dramatic confessions. She asked about patterns, about the story he told himself when he worked past exhaustion, about why slowing down felt like failure. One afternoon, she asked, "If you stop proving you can carry everything, what are you afraid people will see?" He answered without thinking, "That I wasn't enough." The room went quiet. He hadn't planned to say that. She let the silence stretch. "And who decided that?" she asked. He didn't have an answer. At work, his advisory role began to settle. Without direct reports, he found himself observing more. He noticed how often he had overridden others' decisions before, how quickly he had stepped in instead of letting them learn. Mark grew into his expanded responsibilities quickly. One afternoon, Mark knocked lightly on his desk. "Got a minute?" he asked. Michael nodded. Mark laid out a strategy proposal. Not perfect. Roof in places. Michael read it carefully. The old impulse rose. Rewrite this. Fix that. Control the outcome. He felt the tightness start. He paused. "What do you think?" he asked instead. Mark blinked. I think it could work." Michael nodded slowly. "Then try it." Mark stared at him like he'd misheard. "You're not going to tweak it?" "No." Mark hesitated. "Okay," he said, uncertain. When Mark left, Michael felt the discomfort linger. Letting go wasn't passive. It required restraint. At home, evenings became steadier. Dinner at the table, homework together. Sometimes they watched a show, sometimes they just sat. One Saturday morning, Ava came into his room early. "Can we go through Mom's old boxes?" she asked. His body went still. He had stored them in the attic after the funeral. Sealed. Untouched. "Why?" he asked carefully. "I want to see her handwriting," Ava said. The simplicity of that broke something open inside him. He swallowed. "Okay," he said. They climbed into the attic together. Dust floated in the light from the small window. He pulled the boxes forward slowly. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the first one. Clothes. Old scarves. A book with folded corners. Ava reached in and pulled out a notebook. She flipped through it gently. "There," she said, pointing. "A grocery list." Her mother's handwriting, quick and slanted. Ava traced the letters with her finger. She writes like me, Ava said quietly. Michael nodded. They sat on the attic floor, surrounded by pieces of a life that had stopped. He expected to feel crushed. Instead, he felt something steadier. Sadness, yes, but not the sharp kind that made him run. Ava leaned against him. Do you think she'd like how I did my project? She asked. Yes, he said. He didn't hesitate. He didn't analyze. Yes. Ava nodded. They packed the boxes back carefully. Not sealed as tightly this time. Back downstairs, Ava went outside to draw on the driveway with chalk. Michael stood at the window watching her. His phone buzzed once on the table. He didn't rush to it. He let it sit. He watched his daughter kneel on the pavement, tongue sticking out slightly in concentration. He realized something quietly. For months he had treated his survival as the only goal. Make it through the day, make enough money, keep everything standing. But somewhere along the way, he had forgotten to live inside it. Now the days felt less like something to endure, more like something happening. Not dramatic, not grand, just present. That night, as he lay in bed, he thought about the man he had been 3 months earlier. The one sitting in Alexandra's office at midnight, waiting to be punished. He understood now that she hadn't been ending something. She had interrupted it. The tightness in his chest wasn't gone. It still appeared sometimes, quiet and familiar. But it no longer owned him. He could sit with it, breathe, let it pass, and when sleep came, it came without negotiation. He didn't know then that promotions would follow, that new opportunities would open, that someone unexpected would eventually walk into his life and sit across from him at a small coffee shop months later. He didn't know any of that. All he knew was this. He was home before dark. He was at the table. He was on the bench at the park. He was in the auditorium, alive in the moments that used to slip past him. And for now, that was enough. By the time winter came, the office had stopped whispering. Not because they forgot what happened, but because it had become normal. Michael Carter wasn't the man behind the glass anymore. He was the man who left at 5, who didn't answer midnight emails, who spoke less and meant more when he did. People adjusted. Some resented it. Most didn't. Mark thrived. That was the strange part. The team didn't collapse without Michael hovering. If anything, they moved cleaner. Less tense. More willing to admit mistakes early. Michael noticed that too. It bothered him the first few weeks. Then it humbled him. On a Tuesday morning in December, Alexandra asked him to come upstairs. Not urgently. No midnight message. Just a simple calendar invite. Her office looked the same. City behind her. Neat desk. Controlled silence. But she looked different. Tired in a way she never used to show. She gestured toward the chair. Michael sat. I'm promoting you, she said. The words were direct. No build-up. Michael blinked once. That doesn't make sense, he said. Alexandra's mouth twitched slightly. Not quite a smile. It makes perfect sense, she said. You're finally usable. He stared at her. That's a strange compliment. It's the only one that matters, she replied. She slid a folder toward him. VP of Strategic Operations, she said. New responsibilities, new salary, new structure. Michael didn't open it immediately. What's the catch? He asked. Alexandra leaned back. The catch is, you don't get to go back to how you were. He looked down at the folder. A promotion should have felt like victory, like proof he hadn't been wrong to push. Instead, it felt like a test. He opened the folder slowly. The terms were clear. Salary increase, more influence, but the hours were capped. The workload was distributed. There were built-in protections. He looked up. You designed this like a trap. Alexandra didn't deny it. You're too valuable to burn out, she said. And you're too stubborn to stop unless someone forces you. Michael stared at her. The bluntness should have annoyed him, but it didn't. He nodded once. Okay, he said. Alexandra studied him carefully. That's it? She asked. No argument? Michael exhaled. I don't trust myself to do it the old way, he admitted. The words surprised him as he said them. Alexandra's gaze softened slightly. Good, she said. Then we're on the same page. He signed the papers. When he walked out of her office, the hallway felt brighter than usual. Not triumphant, just lighter. He went back downstairs and told Mark. Mark stared at him like he was waiting for a joke. "VP?" Mark said. Michael nodded. Mark let out a breath. "Man," he said quietly, "that's insane." Michael didn't smile. "It doesn't feel insane," he said. Mark frowned. "What does it feel like?" Michael thought for a moment. "It feels like responsibility without punishment," he said. Mark's expression shifted, like he understood something he hadn't before. Later that day, Michael drove home with the folder on the passenger seat. He didn't tell Ava right away. He waited until dinner. They were eating spaghetti. Ava had started liking Parmesan recently and covered her plate with it. Michael watched her chew, hair falling into her face. He reached across the table and tucked it behind her ear without thinking. She didn't flinch. That small detail hit him. He cleared his throat. "I got promoted today," he said. Ava looked up. "To what?" He hesitated. Titles sounded strange out loud. "Vice President," he said. Ava's eyes widened. "Like a boss? He almost laughed. "Something like that." She stared at him a moment, then grinned. "Does that mean we're rich?" "No," he said, and the smile finally came. "Small." Ava laughed. "Can we get a dog?" Michael exhaled. "There it is." She leaned forward eagerly. "Please?" He shook his head, but his expression wasn't hard. "We'll talk about it." Ava's grin stayed. "Okay." After dinner, she asked him to sit with her while she worked on a puzzle. He sat on the living room rug beside her, sorting pieces. His phone buzzed on the couch. He didn't move. Ava glanced at it. "You're not going to check?" she asked. "Not right now." Ava nodded like that was normal. That, more than the promotion, made his chest tighten. Not with panic, with something closer to grief, because he realized she had once believed the phone mattered more than her. He kept sorting puzzle pieces. They finished the puzzle in silence, the kind of silence that felt safe. Later, when Ava went upstairs, Michael stayed on the rug for a while. The living room was dim, the house quiet. He looked at the framed photograph on the shelf. He still didn't talk to it every day, but he didn't avoid it anymore. He stood and walked over, resting his fingers lightly against the frame. "I think I'm doing better," he said quietly. He didn't expect an answer. He didn't need one. Upstairs, Ava's laughter drifted down faintly as she talked to herself while brushing her teeth. Michael listened, and for the first time, the house didn't feel like a place he was trying to keep from collapsing. It felt like a place he lived. The coffee shop was small, tucked between a bookstore and a florist. Michael only went there because it was halfway between the office and Ava's school. It became routine. A stop for 10 minutes. Black coffee. Quiet. He usually sat in the same corner table, back against the wall. One Thursday afternoon, the seat across from him was taken before he noticed. A woman set her cup down carefully, like she wasn't trying to intrude but didn't want to hover either. Michael looked up. She wore a simple coat, hair pulled back, cheeks pink from the cold. She held a paperback book in one hand. "Sorry," she said. "Every other table's taken." Michael hesitated, then nodded. "It's fine." She opened her book but didn't immediately read. He went back to his email on his laptop, but his focus was off. After a few minutes, she spoke again. "You're always here around this time," she said. Michael glanced up. "So are you," he replied. She smiled faintly. "True." Silence returned. It wasn't awkward. It was just quiet. After a while, she closed her book. "My name's Claire," she said. Michael hesitated, then shut his laptop. "Michael." Claire nodded. "Nice to meet you." He didn't ask questions right away. He wasn't sure he remembered how to. Claire didn't push. She sipped her coffee slowly. "What do you do?" she asked eventually. He almost said the title. The new one. The one that sounded impressive. Instead, he said, "I work too much." Claire's mouth curved slightly. That's not a job. It's the only one I've been good at, he said. The honesty surprised him. Claire studied him. You have kids? She asked. One, he said. A daughter. Claire nodded slowly. I can tell, she said. He frowned. How? You have that look, she said. Like you're trying to do everything right and you're scared it won't be enough. Michael stared at her. The words landed uncomfortably close. He didn't respond. Claire didn't apologize. She just looked back down at her book. They didn't exchange numbers that day. They didn't flirt. They didn't turn it into something. But the next week she was there again. Same time. Same corner table. She nodded at him like they already understood each other. He nodded back. That was all. Over the next months, the conversations grew naturally. A sentence here. A small laugh there. Claire was a teacher. 4th grade. She spoke about her students the way Michael spoke about Ava. Not like an accomplishment, but like something that mattered. One day she mentioned she was divorced. Not dramatically, just as a fact. Michael didn't offer sympathy. He simply nodded. He didn't tell her about his wife immediately. He waited. He waited until the day Ava had a hard morning and cried because she couldn't remember her mother's voice clearly. Michael had held her until she calmed down, but his hand shook afterward. He went to the coffee shop and sat down, staring at his cup without drinking. Claire arrived and sat across from him. She didn't ask what was wrong right away. She waited. Michael finally spoke. My wife died, he said quietly. Claire didn't react with shock. Her face softened, but she didn't pity him. I'm sorry, she said. Michael nodded. I don't like talking about it, he added. Claire's voice stayed gentle. You don't have to talk about it, she said. But you don't have to carry it alone either. Michael looked down at his hands. He didn't trust his voice. Claire didn't reach for him, didn't touch him. She just sat there with him in the silence, like she knew silence could be its own kind of support. That was what changed everything. Not romance, not attraction, just the steady presence of someone who didn't demand he be okay. The relationship grew slowly after that. A walk once, dinner once, then more. When Michael introduced her to Ovea, it wasn't forced. It happened one afternoon at the park. Claire had come along, sitting on the bench while Ava played. Ava had watched her carefully at first. Then Ava asked bluntly, Are you going to leave? Claire had paused. Michael's stomach tightened. Claire answered calmly. I don't plan to, she said. Ava stared at her. Then she nodded once, as if filing the answer away. Later, Ava asked Michael quietly, Do you like her? Michael hesitated. Yes, he said. Ava considered that. Then she said, Okay. That was all. Life didn't become perfect. Michael still had days where his chest tightened for no clear reason. Still had nights where he woke at 3 a.m. with his mind racing. But now he didn't immediately reach for his laptop. He reached for breath, for stillness, for the quiet reminder that he was allowed to rest. One evening, months later, Ava fell asleep on the couch with her head on his lap while a movie played in the background. Claire sat beside him, reading. Michael looked down at Ava's face. Peaceful, unburdened. He realized something then. The goal had never been to stop missing his wife. That wasn't possible. The goal was to stop using work as a way to punish himself for surviving. He looked at the framed photograph on the shelf across the room. He didn't feel guilt in that moment. He felt gratitude. Not the loud kind. The contained kind. The kind that sits quietly in the chest and stays there. Later, when Claire went home, Michael carried Ava upstairs and tucked her into bed. He stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her sleep. Her breathing was even. Her face relaxed. He turned off the light and closed the door gently. In the hallway, he paused. He leaned his hand against the wall, eyes closed. He felt the weight of the years behind him. Not erased, not healed neatly, just carried differently now. He could still remember the man in the office at midnight, waiting to be fired. He could still feel the tightness in his chest from that night. But he also remembered the auditorium, the park, the puzzle on the living room rug. He remembered Ava's hand slipping into his without thinking. He remembered the first time she hugged him without hesitation, and he understood, quietly, what Alexandra had done. She hadn't saved his career. She had saved his life. Michael opened his eyes. The hallway was dim. The house was quiet. And for once, the quiet didn't feel like loss. It felt like home.